This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back, everyone. This is the X-Zone. I am Rob McConnell, coming to you from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. If you'd like to find out all about the X-Zone Radio Show, www.xzoneradiotv.com is our website. And to find out all about the programming we have available 7/24/365 on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net. Heather Roan Robbins is an international astrologer, intuitive, and ceremonialist with 30-plus years experience in New Mexico, New York City, and I believe Minnesota. She writes star codes, astrology by day, not sign, for Wee Moon Calendar and the Santa Fe New Mexicans Pasatiempo or Tiempo. That's a good Irish name. And
Tempo, yeah.
yeah, and www.roanrobbins.com. She is the recent author of Moon Wisdom and Everyday Palmistry, both from Seco Book and available on Amazon.com. And a children's book, Tallulah's Bears Bedtime Book, a sleep-inducing wandering with wonderful illustrations. My goodness, you're a busy lady. Welcome to the X-Zone.
Well, thank you for inviting me here.
This is so super. So tell me, what was it in your life that pointed your direction towards astrology?
You know, it's a funny family joke. My father was an abstract mathematician, and my mother was a psychiatric nurse.
Oh, boy.
I think you put them in the blender, and you get an astrologer. I've been fascinated. I've been studying mythology since I was 10 years old, 11 years old.
Yeah.
I did my first astrological calendar when I was 11, and I am in my 60s now, and I have been doing this a long time, and I'm fascinated by how astrology manifests in history, around us in our everyday news and life, our metaphysics, our emotions, and the practical stuff of our life. It kind of points to the symbolism that connects them all.
I have always been fascinated by astrology. I don't know how you people do what you do. I really don't. But I know that there has to be a large element of science because you use planets, you use mathematics, you use a lot of very pinpointed data that cannot be disputed. And you get all this information about people. You're great.
Yes, thank you, and I greatly appreciate your approach. Now, I am so grateful for computers because it used to take me, when I first started out, it took me 3 hours of math to do a chart.
Wow.
Now I can punch it in and it displays for me, and I can rotate it through time and space and see larger patterns. It's much easier now that we have computers. We can take it, we can see the patterns more deeply, but it's always good for an astrologer to know how to do it longhand so they understand the pattern.
Or just in case the day comes when somebody fires an EMF disruptor and we can't use computers anymore, right?
Exactly.
What?
And we say that it's not that the planets are making us do anything, and we're not saying, like, I know that Mercury, now retrograde, is making me make mistakes. No. But that I often say if you look at a fence and you see horns on top of a fence, you might not want to put your foot underneath it. Now, the horns won't hurt your foot, but whatever's moving those horns might also step on your toes.
Isn't
that the planets
truth,
refer to those big patterns in the cosmos that we can read and see and work with. We have a lot of choice about how. And that way we feel empowered by those patterns rather than caught by them.
Yeah, it amazes me, and I'm looking forward to sharing the next little while with you and sharing the world of astrology with our worldwide audience here in the X Zone Nation. So, Heather, I'm going to ask you to stand by. We have to take a break. X Zone Nation, astrology, to me, a science. And I'm telling you, when you look at the sky at night, and then you have an astrological chart done by a professional astrologer like Heather, man, you have to ask a lot of questions. My big question is, how? That's 3 questions. I know, but they're all the same. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with our very special guest, Heather Roan Robbins, right here on the X Zone. Her website is www.roanrobbins.com. That's ROANROBBINS.com. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell. This is a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. Monday through Friday from 11 p.m. Eastern until 3 a.m. Eastern, right here on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and of course, our good friends on iHeartRadio. Don't go away.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
I am Dr. Carl O'Helvey, founder, president of a new cancer foundation focusing on evidence-based physical, mental, and spiritual interventions, including natural cancer cures, prayer, meditation, affirmations, nutrition, and other related holistic cancer prevention and cure modalities. These are used in cancer education, research, and financing care. I ask for your help to continue this important work by donating at www.holisticcancerfoundation.com.
Hello, I'm Pete Marsh. With my daughter Justina, we will be presenting the new radio show, Too Good to Be True. If something seems too good to be true, it usually is. But with the help of Justina's amazing gifts, we're going to gain insight into questions that don't yet have complete answers. Have you wondered who built Stonehenge and for what reason? Why are crop circles found in the same region as Stonehenge and elsewhere? Are crop circles a hoax, or are they created with technologies that we have little knowledge of? Who built the pyramids in Egypt and also in other countries? How and why were they built? Was the Titanic switched with the Britannic as part of a gigantic insurance fraud, or for more insidious reasons? What caused the Tunguska event when trees were flattened over an 800 square mile area in Siberia? Will the new insights be too good to be true? Well, that will depend on what you are prepared to believe. Please join us as we start on this journey together. For more information on Too Good to Be True, visit www.xzbn.net.
Little children aren't the only ones afraid of the dark. Millions of soldiers return from war zones with PTSD, anger, frustration, fear, and loneliness, much of which surfaces during the darkness of the night. You have the chance to change the lives of these American heroes. Songs and Stories for Soldiers.us provides free MP3 players for these men and women. With a list of 3 million songs in 16 different styles, 100,000 audiobooks, and 30,000 old-time radio programs, every veteran can find something to soothe and comfort them at no cost. All our players contain an 8-hour audio program designed to help veterans fall asleep. With 1,500 plus vets now participating, it's our goal to deliver 10,000 audio players this year. Go to our website at songsandstoriesforsoldiers.us. Help us help a veteran make it through the night.
Heather, what is the history of astrology? Who used it first, and how was it discovered?
You know, I'm not quite sure how it was discovered, but I know that when the world was a lot darker and we had no electric lights to camouflage us, we could see that the planets, which are what they called the wanderers, is the translation for the word planets, the wanderers, there were some stars that moved through the sky and others that held still. And they began to notice their correlation with the archetypes in mythology already, and they began to notice the patterns that when these planets moved in certain ways, that they correlated with events here on Earth. And the Chaldeans probably started the record and way back in early history of Persia and before that. But every culture has its own form of astrology. In America, we see signs of they watch the cycles of Venus and Mercury very carefully throughout the Native American cultures in Central and North America, and had long stories about them. China, India, each place comes up with stories of their own, watching the cycles of the sun and the moon and how we are affected here on Earth. I think the stars, the night sky, was something we lived so much more closely with before electricity.
But how do you, as an astrologer, going through the 12 signs of the zodiac, get so specific with different people that you do the charts for? This boggles me.
Right. Well, we don't get just the sun. You know, the sun is amazingly important. All the rest of the planets are reflecting the sun's light. Without the sun's light, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
So, but we also, the moon, as far as we here on Earth are concerned, the moon is as important as the sun sign. They both take up a half a degree of arc in the sky. They look the same size, or we wouldn't have eclipses. It's a rather miraculous thing that we are a planet where the distance between here and the sun and here and the moon and the size of the moon make the moon and the sun, the symbols of consciousness and unconsciousness, look equivalent here on Earth. And so we look at where the moon is, what sign, if you could stand when you were born, but you couldn't because you're a baby, but if you could have stood and pointed to the eastern horizon, what sign was rising then? What describes how you see the world, how the world sees you, your filter system or your doorway. And then each of the planets, and anything you remember from Greek mythology about Mercury, the trouble that God got themselves into, and the gift they gave, talks about the continuum of that planet. So Mercury was a messenger of the gods, the FTD florist guy with wings on his feet and, hands. And he talks about this planet can never be more than one sign away from the sun. It's always in the same sign as your sun, a little bit one sign before or one sign afterwards. But the Mercury talks about how we communicate, how we move through the world, how we learn, how we connect. And so for every sun sign, there are those with Mercury in the same sign, one before, one afterwards, and they all have a little shading of a difference. What planets aspect Mercury, form geometric shapes to that Mercury, changes the nature of our thinking process, how we communicate, how we hear, how we learn. And because Mercury goes around the sun 3 times a year to an Earth year, 3 times a year for 3 weeks, Mercury looks like it's backing up against the zodiac because it's moving in front of the sun. And it looks like it's backing up in the sky. And Mercury is a planet of motion. Mercury sits on top of Grand Central Station in New York City, a very mercurial city. And when Mercury's retrograde, which it is right now and has been from April 9th to May 4th, when Mercury is retrograde, we find communication can be a little bit more difficult, transportation gets a little strange, but it's a wonderful time to do anything that begins RE, to remember, to reflect, to review, to re-edit, to reorganize. But it may be hard to get things moving forward. A lot of last-minute changes in plans.
Right. So it would seem that the Greeks had more than just a fair bit of influence into the science of astrology.
Quite a bit. But they also were taking the information from the cultures before them. The Egyptians had been studying astrology and working with it for a long time. The Romans took it from there. But Greece formed an unusually intact whole view of psychology by describing their gods and goddesses. They described different components of our psyche and our culture. And they did such a good job describing it that we've been using their nomenclature and their symbols ever since.
Now, you wrote a book about the moon in a person's chart and astrological calendar. Why did you start there?
Well, there's so much has been written about the sun, and the moon talks about an emotional prime directive that we come into this life with, and that we often, it seems like the universe uses to trick us into some of our hardest work. But the moon sign brings us into how we feel. When you know somebody's moon sign, you know how to make them feel at home, what ticks them off, what makes them feel more comfortable, what their emotional prime directive is and how better to work with them. So the moon changes sign every 2.5 days. And when the moon is going through a sign, we feel it every day. One of the best ways to study astrology is to get a basic lunar calendar. And you can get the hardback version, you can look on my website, or you can look on any astrological website and ask for the astrology of the day. And when the moon it kind of changes the nature of the atmosphere. So when I was living in New York for a few years, I noticed that people dressed according to the moon sign without knowing it.
Really?
They just all felt like putting on their hobnail boots and dressing in black when the moon was in Scorpio. If the moon was in Pisces, they might be wearing little softer colors and be a little kinder to each other, a little hypersensitive. But how they spoke to each other on the subway, how they dressed, how they interacted, really changed according to the moon sign. And with that, we imprint the moment of our birth, the moment that we first start breathing on our own or moving as being an independent being, as we imprint that moment and we live through it with, again, a lot of choice about how, but we live through it for the rest of our lives. And that moon sign changes our habits, how we cook, how we deal with our animals, just the way we are at home in the world.
People are probably
saying... So
saying...
it's a good thing to help with each other.
People are probably saying, the moon sign, how can the moon affect us? Well, have you ever heard of lunatics? You ask any policeman or anyone who works in the emergency field, come a full moon, wow, things go wacky. The tides on this planet are governed by the moon. So it only makes sense that since we are such a great water we're made of so much water that we would be affected by the moon. Now, when you say the moon sign, are there difference? What do you consider to be a moon sign?
So, the moon sign, the 12 signs of the zodiac.
Yes.
They're band out there in the sky, and in the West, we don't follow. Once upon a time, the constellations and the signs were exactly the same, but the constellations, because our planet, our solar system is moving through the galaxy. They've moved a little bit in the last 3,000 years.
Okay.
And that has allowed us to. In the Vedic astrology, they follow, or in India, they follow the constellation itself. Here in the West, the first month after the spring equinox is always Aries, where the sun is going through. And that same part of the sky, the moon will go through for 2 days once a month. So whatever planet is in front of that sign, and I think of the signs like gels on the lighting on the stage. Is the light being passed through blue or red or gray? Is the light being passed through Aries or Taurus or Gemini? And it colors the nature of the light coming through, but the light's coming from the planet.
Okay. So I understand that most of the astrology that are in modern day newspapers are the sun, are sun sign astrology?
Correct, and that's based on where the sun was when you were born and where the sun is now. Now, most of the astrology in the newspaper that's done by sign is pretty general.
Yeah.
But they do have a system by which you look at the major aspects of the day or the week or the month and notice what house it would be going through if you put that sign on the first house cusp. But you can get a lot more information about the nature of the day. And I think of looking at astrology, because the article I write is by day, not by sign. So I'm not going to tell an Aries or a Taurus something different each day, but I'm going to tell them what the day is going to feel like and how they can negotiate it. Like if you are if you're walking through the weather report and the weather can say it's raining, it's going to rain tomorrow. Well, the farmer might be happy, but the lover planning a picnic is not.
Gotcha.
That same aspect is going to affect different people in different ways depending upon what's going on in their chart. But it's helpful to know that it's raining, or it's helpful to know that Mars is going to square Neptune tomorrow.
So I guess the newspaper articles that we're all used to reading are just generalities. And there's, because if you take the entire population of the Earth and divide it by 12, wow.
It's not very specific, and astrologers know that's the bread and butter that most people get paid for, but it doesn't well represent the field of astrology. If you want to know about astrology, get your chart done or look at the astrology of the day. It's not that those are wrong, and sometimes those can be the perfect meditation to help you open up a possibility. But they're inexact, and they are, they have to be generalized to fit 1/12 of the population.
Sure. All right. Just before we go to break, where can people get copies of your books?
You can go to Amazon.com, or you can go to my website and order it from there, right through to Amazon. And I have The Moon Wisdom is about how to work with astrology by the day, because how to work with the astrological calendar, very basic and entrance level, and how to work with the astrology of a chart, how to get to be comfortable with somebody or your own child or your boss through astrology.
You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. Please stand by. Thanks so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to be with us tonight. We sincerely appreciate it. All right.
my great pleasure.
All right, Exo Nation. Heather Roan Robbins is my guest. Her website is roanrobbins.com. And we'll both be back on the other side of this break talking more about astrology here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. I'm Rob McConnell. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network and the shows we have, our hosts, and much more, www.xzbn.net.
Dreams are our personal gateways into infinite wisdom. Don't miss shamanic counselor and indigenously trained dream decoder Sandra Corcoran's inspiring book, Shamanic Awakening Between the Dark and the Daylight. This remarkable work chronicles Sandra's 35 years of experience with diverse wisdom keepers and her initiations throughout the Americas and across the British Isles, Turkey, Greece, and Egypt. Sandy's knowledge of symbology, psychology, and myth influence her dream blog and workshops. Sandy offers private tarot readings, international journeys, a meditative CD, as well as her book, Shamanic Awakening, to encourage you as you navigate this earth walk, creating a deeper connection to yourself and all that is. Find this and more at Sandy's website, starwalkervisions.com.
This is the X Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
How would you like to be able to read other people's minds? Well, the next best thing is here. When you know how to read a person's name, you know how the person thinks, feels, and behaves. Each letter in our name holds a key to unlock our true essence. Our name contains both our gifts and challenges in this lifetime. Mnemology science discovers personality secrets hidden in the placement of the letters of our names, including the first and last impression people remember about us. Roan shows us how to interpret the arrangement of letters as outlined in her book, Know the Name, Know the Person. Sharon Lynn Wyeth created mnemology science after 18 years of research and testing her theories, and has supported thousands of people around the world in understanding themselves and others better. You'll enjoy Sharon's unique teachings as she shares her system to learn the gifts behind your given birth name. Even if you don't like your birth name, there are jewels in this book. If you're thinking of changing your name, ready to name your child, or wanting to get along better with others, this is the book for you. If you'd like to improve your relationships and change your life for the better, get the book today, Know the Name, Know the Person, or visit www.knowthename.com. That's www.knowthename.com.
Hello, I'm Justina Marsh, and with my dad Pete, we are going to present a new show called Too Good to Be True. Together, we are aiming to discover more truths about this world and beyond. Do you have unanswered questions about the world? Do you ever wonder about aliens, conspiracy theories, or the universe? There are many shows discussing subjects such as pyramids or UFOs, but we want to relay this information based on our own research, including from spiritual means. Hopefully, listeners will be helped with their own beliefs and will appreciate the psychic insights that add to the previous research and information. We both look forward to sharing this insight and beginning this journey with our listeners. Visit xzbn.net for more information about when to listen.
Welcome back, everyone. The topic of the hour is astrology. And my guest is Heather Roan Robbins. Her website is rowanrobbins.com. And she is the author, a recent author of Moon Wisdom and Everyday Palmistry. And we're going to be talking to Heather about her bedtime book later on in this interview. Heather, welcome back, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right, Heather, off air, I gave you my information for your astrological charting. So tell me, walk me through what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Now, I looked at where the planets were, and you were born close to noon, and your sun in Taurus gives you that stability and ability to follow through. It's a fixed sign. It's a sign in the middle of a season. But your moon is in Gemini. So when you read how stubborn and solid and, occasionally accused of being boring, Tauruses are, but they're not. They're rich and fertile. But you have an ability to communicate that is above and beyond most Tauruses. And your moon is in the Gemini, the sign of communication, ruled by Mercury, able to multitask, to talk to many different people. That gives you the ability to translate, communicate, talk to anybody at any socioeconomic level. You have your Mercury in Aries and Venus in Aries, which gives you charisma and intensity and allows you to be fully present where you are. You also get bored easily with that combination, and so you kind of need life with a little bit of an edge to it, and like being on radio brings you fully present. When you were born, Leo was rising, and that's ability to want to be seen and to be a good teacher and to be able to hold up people's attention. Pluto had just risen when you were born, and I might ask you, if this was a private reading, about the story of your birth, because it might have been a little eventful. But Pluto on the ascendant says you've been dealing with intense issues since you were born, and you're good at dealing with them and being present in real issues and real troubles and handling them well since you were born. It also says that, you don't do well with small talk, and if you get bored, your attention wanders, but you can be fully present to real topics and a real conversation.
Craig, on a score of 10, what would you give Heather for what you just said? No, I said 10, not 20, Craig. He says you did a 20 on a 10 score. You nailed it. You nailed it. Wow. I'm impressed.
And you like unusual friends and unusual people, and you like people to have that are either eccentric or original.
Well, doesn't everybody?
No. My friends do, but that's because I am eccentric, and that sort of fits them. But it looks like you have a very interesting community around you.
Oh, I certainly do.
Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, and the Sun are all in the 9th house. And the 9th house is the house of broadcasting, publishing, education, international travel, of getting the word out one way or the other.
So tell me, how did I know what to do, how I did it, even before I knew that this was my planetary destination in life?
Well, we're offering you a map, but you can see if you know yourself. If you know a landscape, you don't necessarily need the map. The map is helpful when you want to make changes or renovate.
Yes.
But you could also just get on the ground and follow the path. So not everybody needs astrology. And I am wary of people who use astrology to distance themselves from just being fully present and alive.
I see.
And I want them to use it as a map to help them be fully present and alive.
So how did I know what the stars had already planned for me without knowing this?
But you came to know yourself. You heard what you longed for. You noticed what you were good at.
Gotcha. Okay. So a lot depends on the person. And can I say that astrology will be like the roadmap. Astrology can point you to turning left on Elm Street, but if you're bound and determined to turn right,
Correct.
How, do you find that there are people who seek your advice who get dependent on you and what you tell them?
They might try.
Yeah.
I won't let clients do that. I mean, I do ongoing counseling for some people. I'm also an interfaith minister, and I can use that in part of my spiritual counseling. But I'm always going to hand the ball back to them and remind them that astrology is a map. What they do with it is up to them. And we can use it as a way of helping them hear themselves and hear this moment in history and how they best utilize it. But learning to hear their own inner voice is the goal.
I'd like to ask you about a specific date that had the world that you and I deal with kind of unbalanced, and that's December the 21st, 2012. Astrologically, what did you make of that date?
Again, that's for an astrologer, that wasn't so key.
Okay.
And there are many stories about it becoming a
the end of the world, the
end of the world, and all that. I think, when I see people saying it's the end of the world, one, I don't think they've studied history very much. They haven't looked at the aspects, and they're trying to get out of their homework. What there was during that time, from 2010 to 2015, Uranus and Pluto formed a right angle to each other 7 times. Now, Uranus and Pluto, Uranus takes 84 years to go around the zodiac. Pluto takes several hundred years to go around the zodiac. So they don't run into each other very often. And from 1965 to 1968, they conjunct. And when two planets conjunct, it begins a new cycle, like the new moon, when the sun and the moon conjunct, and begins a new cycle every month. So when those 2 planets conjunct, we see the 2 planets we associate with change and revolution together. We saw the whole world go through a reorganization of society, rules, laws, ways of thinking, ways of being. And it continued, we lived with that for many months, many years afterwards, all through the 70s. Now, between 2010 and 2015, particularly between 2012 and 2015, those same 2 planets formed a right angle. They squared each other, the first major aspect since the mid-60s. And we had a lot of change in a short period of time. And so that time period, I didn't see it as a day where anything was going to end, because I didn't see that in the stars. But I saw it as the heart of the turning point, when we are really getting ready to make some major changes in the world. Now, there's always a reaction. When we've stretched almost too far, we can snap back. And I think we're in that snap back now. Are we going to throw away all the changes that we made from 2010 to 2015, politically, socially, culturally, personally? Or are we going to find a way to support them and continue them farther?
I remember when the movement started about the astrological impact, as I call it, during the hippie age. And it was wonderful. Like, it was just like society received an injection of joy juice. Everybody was talking about flowers, making love, not war, good vibrations. They were I loved those days. I truly loved those days. And then you had the great artists, the great poets, great musicians. And everybody was singing about love. Where have all the flowers gone? And, get out of Vietnam. And then you look, here we are in the year 2017, and we're seeing all the trouble and strife in the Middle East. We've got North Korea with, toying with the nuclear button. You've got a president in the United States who, I don't know how to describe it. Do you see any semblance of sanity returning to the way that we look at the world and we look at each other in the future?
It's a good question. Yes, I do. And I have watched these large cycles. Some of my research was to look at some of the major astrological cycles back several thousand years to see what happened when some of these major cycles occurred. And I do see, that we go through these pendulum swings and come to find new answers. Pluto is coming back to where it was right before the American Revolution. It's about where it was the year before the Boston Tea Party.
Wow.
And the desire to have to question how we're using power. Pluto's in Capricorn, the sign that talks about power and struggle, structure and authority. And so our whole approach to power, structure, and authority was being challenged, being brought to the edge of, death and rebirth right during the American Revolution, and it's happening again.
It's funny because I was reading an article earlier today that said President Trump's wackiest tweets are during a full moon.
Yes. He was born during a full moon.
Have you done the chart on the president?
Oh, yes. We're watching it pretty carefully, I tell you. I had I, as an astrologer, did not call the election because I knew I had such strong feelings that I wasn't seeing clearly.
Right.
But I did see that his chart showed signs of moving and busyness, and hers showed signs of rest and safety. And rest and safety is not what you get as president of the country.
No, that is so true.
So I saw that and was worried, but would not call it because I refused to support that. But here we are dealing with it, and in many ways it's helping America expose some of the work that we really need to get to.
You and I have to take our final break. Please stand by. Exo Nation, our guest this hour is Heather Roan Robbins. And I have to tell you something, Heather. I admire you and I give you a lot of credibility because you said one thing that I look for in a guest. When they look back and do research to see what has happened in the past, to me that means they're very serious, and my hat is off to you.
Thank you.
Exo Nation,
It's
Heather
fascinating.
It is. Heather Roan Martins is our special guest. Heather Roan Robbins. I don't know who Heather Roan
Mercury's
Martins.
retrograde.
Yeah, okay, I'll take that as a good excuse. Her website is rowanrobbins.com. I nearly did it again. Oh, I know what it is. Rowan and Martin's laughing. That's what it is.
Right. We were talking about the 60s.
Right. Okay, www.rowanrobbins.com. And we'll both be back on the other side of this break as we, return back here to the X Zone, a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. So you take care of your bippy, and something very interesting may happen. Don't go away. Hi everyone, Rob McConnell here, and I wanted to spend a moment on internet streaming. Everybody has heard about internet streaming, but not many know much about it. Did you know the internet streams just about everything?
Movies.
From new releases to old classics.
TV shows.
Almost every show, every episode, and much more. But the question has always been, how do you do it? Well now, thanks to the folks at 123 Ready TV, I have the answer for you. They have developed a simple program app, 123 Ready TV, that you install on your Windows PC, Android smartphone, or Android tablet that can have you streaming like a pro in less than 5 minutes. You truly won't believe how much is available or how easy it is to do until you try. And for a one-time cost of only $19.99, this product is a real winner.
To learn more about 123 Ready TV, visit our website at www.xzbn.net.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
True healing must address 4 levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, for us to live joyful and productive lives. We tend to treat 3 of the 4, leaving the spiritual languishing. If you're tired of the same dysfunctional patterns cropping up in your life, Soul Balancing is for you. Trixie Phelps, owner and founder of Soul Balancing, is a naturally gifted energy healer trained in numerous esoteric forms, including shamanism. Trixie has created a powerful modality that safely and effectively clears your energetic field. A Soul Balancing session can remove interference, heal trauma, and restore your hope. Contact Trixie for a life-changing long-distance session today, www.soulbalancing.world. There's a legend shared by many indigenous cultures of a time when the nations were cast to the 4 corners of the world. Each nation was given a body of sacred knowledge that held a different portion of the truth to preserve. True reality could not be known until all the nations reunited, combining the information. If a single one was missing, the world could not be reborn and darkness would prevail. The Science of Magic Radio is dedicated to reuniting the sacred knowledge. With the understanding, none of us has all the answers, but together we can open new perceptions and possibilities. Through our combined vision, the world can be reborn into a place where darkness no longer prevails. Join me, Gwilda Wiyaka, and the Science of Magic daily on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net, or visit us at thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome back, everyone. Heather Roan Robbins is our guest of this hour. Rowan and Martin's laughing. I used to love that show. Artie Johnson. Remember, he'd pop up out of a fern and say, interesting, very interesting, dressed in a German uniform. And let me see. Flip Wilson with his famous Here Come the Judge. Goldie Hawn as the blonde ditz. Let me see, what else was there? Oh, what was her name? Lily
the old
Tomlin.
lady that hit you in the head.
Oh, that was Ruth Buzzy.
Her.
That was Ruth Buzzy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the operator, Lily Tomlin. Some great people came out of that. Going down memory lane with my guest this hour, Heather Roan Robbins. Her website is roanrobbins.com. Now, you've got a couple of other books. You have Everyday Palmistry.
Yes.
And then you have a children's book. Let's talk about Everyday Palmistry first.
Now, I've been studying palmistry almost as long as I have astrology, and I kept palm prints of people for many decades, lost them in a flood, but
Oh, no.
I watched people's hands change depending upon the decisions they made in their life. And palmistry, astrology talks about your place in the universe and how you record the big patterns. And palmistry is how you felt about it and what you're doing with it. And you can use it. I don't think that you can really define someone's future by it because the lines do change. But you can talk about how to bring yourself into more balance, how you're responding to your life, how you have reacted to the transits of your life. And the basics of palmistry, which are to be able to read people's personalities, not so much define their future, but to read their personalities, is easy, and it's available when you boil it down to the basic symbols of it. And that's not simplifying it. It's just bringing it down to the core patterns that anybody can use who talks to the public. Anybody, you can always shake their hand. You see their hands as they talk. And most of the illustrations that I use in it are taken from famous people who are waving at the camera. So we happen to have their palm as they're waving. And
that's true, yeah.
It shows, or holding up their hand or stopping something. And with that, that shows us both an example that you can read people's hands very easily because they show them to you, and that we can use examples of people that you know the history of. So we have Obama's chart, Putin, Nelson Mandela. I believe we have Amy Winehouse. We have a lot of famous examples that people would see in everyday palmistry.
That's fascinating.
It's a book on palmistry for the public.
Palmistry for the public. I love it. Tell me about your children's book, because I'm a dad of 6 wonderful kids and 10 beautiful grandchildren. So
wonderful. And it was written for a granddaughter, Tallulah Bear's bedtime book, because she had trouble sleeping. But I've done work with trance work and hypnotherapy over the years, and I wanted a book that when you read to your child, it brought them into a state of relaxation. So this is the story of a little polar bear that can't sleep, and her mother, takes them on a journey, and they talk about breathing like the sleeping dog, and it brings them into counting the stars and, breathing with the trees, and it brings them into a state of relaxation so that it's easier for them to fall asleep. And it worked on my granddaughter, so I brought it to my publisher and said, what about this? And they gave me a wonderful illustrator who also did the work on Moon Wisdom, which is an illustrated book. And she did a really transcendental view of those. If you go to Amazon.com and go to, my name, Heather Roan Robbins, you can see some of the illustrations from it. There's even a little video about it, and see if those would be illustrations that might appeal to you. Several people have said, well, I don't know about my kid, but I was relaxed after I read that. Can you make one for adults? So I hope it's helpful to people.
Isn't that wonderful? Well, congratulations on that. We're certainly going to have to check them out, and we'll post the links up on our website, because I know that being a dad, there are times when the kids just can't get to sleep for one reason or another, and this would be a wonderful tool. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
As an astrologer, has there ever been a time when you've done a chart for someone and said, oh my God?
Yes, but I'm usually lucky that they come to me at the end of a difficult set of transits. But if I see a series of tough transits coming up ahead, I try to work with them to frame it in the best way possible so they can use it well.
Excellent. I love it.
And I remember one client that I had seen that she was going to go through a very difficult time ahead. And I said, well, you may have a near-death experience, but it may just be that you see a truck comes too close to you. You don't necessarily have to be, hurt. But you may notice that in the face of life and death, you're asking some tough questions. And I said, I want you to use this time to clear up some problems between you and your family, and to really remember what's important to you, and work to be fully alive. And I didn't hear from her for a couple of years, and then I got a call back and said, I thought of what you said halfway down the 200-foot cliff that I fell off of and broke my back.
Oh, my God.
And she said, and I had to go home and talk to my family because I needed their care, and we hadn't spoken in 10 years. But during that time, I learned to trust them again. They came through for me. We worked out our problems, and we're in a much better place.
And don't forget, Exo Nation, it's not the fall that kills, it's the sudden stop.
So true. Mm-hmm.
I'm tossed at which way I want to go with this. Let's go, if you wouldn't mind, being as politically correct as you are, the astrological chart, if possible, of President Donald Trump.
Now, again, I have his chart in front of me here, and I will gladly talk about it. But I want to remind everybody that it's always what you choose to do with the chart. Mm-hmm. You can look at the same chart with heart. We have a saying that you can't tell the difference between a murderer and a surgeon's chart. They have the same ability to cut the body, but they've chosen to use it differently.
I like that.
So I look at this chart, born on the full moon, and many of us are, but the full moon with the sun in Gemini, which is multitask, sees a million things, the moon in Sagittarius, traveling, viewing, restless, but neither one of those is very good with follow-through. Leo rising, wants to be seen. Born with Mars on the ascendant in Leo, nothing makes him more angry than being ignored. And Mars, wherever Mars is, talks about our excitement, our entrepreneurship, but also our temper, what really can make us mad. And Mars in Leo is, if he is ignored, he would get mad, or if he feels disrespected. Pluto in the 12th house, he probably felt disempowered as a kid with his father, and wants to exert his power wherever he is. And if you've seen him shaking hands, I remember watching him try to shake hands with your prime minister, who did such a wonderful job managing him. He always, when he shakes his hand, he tugs on the person and pulls them. And what a strange habit, but that's kind of like establishing a dominance. He was born with Jupiter and Neptune in the second house of material resources, and that can mean a rather magical approach to money. And it's not that he came in with a fair amount of it. Jupiter's the largest planet. Where we have Jupiter, we often have a sense of abundance or too much of something. And Jupiter-Neptune conjunct is, not particularly practical. There's nothing in his chart that has common sense. There's nothing practical. There's not one earth sign in his chart. He has Mercury, Venus, and Saturn in Cancer, which can be, on a good day, could make him more sensitive and more guarded, but can also make him not defensive and not willing to, he doesn't let much into his own emotions. He tends to keep people at a distance on the other side of his shell. And there's some deep insecurities with that Venus-Saturn conjunction that look like in the very first few years of his life, some pattern that got set up that he's always trying to prove himself to himself and others. Now, again, people can try to prove themselves and do it by becoming the best person they can, or they can prove it by trying to establish dominance. In some other way. So again, that's up to him how he uses it, but I'm not so fond of how he's using it.
You know what?
Now
we've got about a minute left.
Okay.
So I just want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. Let our listeners know how they can find out more about you and where they can contact you if they'd like to have a chart done by you.
Well, they can go to Roan Robbins, RoanRobbins.com, and I have an online scheduler there. You can just book appointment right there. You can read the section called Readings. It'll tell you about, how to reach me, what to feel, what to think about before reading, and how to use the information.
Heather, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great delight. Thank you for the reading you did for me. I love the book that you've written for children. Do me a favor, please come back and see us again.
Would love to.
Take care of yourself.
Thank you very much.
And once again, thank you for your time. Exo Nation, our guest this hour has been Heather Roan Robbins. And once again, her website is www.roanrobbins.com. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away.